Okay, let's talk about something that confuses a lot of new people that are coming to the Ethereum ecosystem with all these different tokens. In this video, I want to talk about the difference between ERC20 and ERC777 and ERC721 versus ERC1155. Now, the first one, the ERC20 token, is something that we extensively talked in our course. It's representing fungible tokens. You know, the tokens, they have no kind of serial number or running number. All the tokens are equally worth something, like you own $1, except some collector's editions. If you own $1 from today, it doesn't make any difference from owning a dollar coin yesterday. They are all equally worth $1, no matter how they look like. Same as with these ERC20 tokens. It's basically just a number in a database. There's functions to send, transfer, approve, maybe even mint and burn things. They have a transfer event and an approve event. There's a couple of benefits and drawbacks. Well, the first benefit is obviously it's extremely easy to use. It can represent anything from loyalty points, money, like casino chips for poker or something. So anything fungible can be represented with these ERC20 tokens. And furthermore, you can not only transfer them, you can give allowance to other people to spend tokens in your name. It's very convenient. Now, the drawbacks are you can accidentally send tokens to other contracts, and then they are basically locked in forever if those contracts do not have any ability to send tokens back or interact somehow with this. And there has been a confusion around the decimal points. Right now, they are pretty much fixed at 18 decimals, but still there is confusion. I think USDC coin only has 8 decimals. So every time you work with these tokens, you have to take care of the decimal places. Also, I was talking about the mint and burn functionality. That's not standardized at all. You can have any kind of mint and burn functionality somewhere in your smart contracts. There's not even a standardized mint and burn event as far as I know. The only standardized events are for transfer, allowance. And that's it. And if you receive tokens, you cannot really react on it. You basically just send tokens from one address to another. It updates the internal balance mapping, but that's about it. You cannot do anything. And this is exactly where the ERC777 token comes in. It's the same. It's a fungible for fungible tokens. It's backwards compatible with ERC20. Can be backwards compatible. Doesn't have to be backwards compatible, but there's backwards compatibility. The receiving smart contracts, if you want to send tokens to a smart contract address, they potentially need to implement and expose the ERC777 token sender interface. That's a special interface. You can have a look at the Open Zeppelin example. You need to expose this interface. And then you can add hooks to call smart contracts when tokens are transferred. And this token standard has standardized mint and burn events. Problem with this token standard is it's not very wide in use yet, which is one of the major drawbacks, besides being harder to implement. And the fallback override to send tokens to receiving contracts is sometimes also necessary. Now, the good thing is it's backwards compatible to ERC20 tokens, potentially, if you deactivate a couple of features. And that's the most important thing. It can prevent accidental transfers so that the tokens are locked in other contracts, because that one has caused millions in damages already where people accidentally sent tokens to their online wallet and the online wallet couldn't even interact with a smart contract. And then that's it. Tokens are locked in. And it has hooks. So you can interact with other smart contracts from that smart contract and basically call other smart contracts once a token is transferred. Now, the other thing that we did, or we are going to do in this course, is ERC721 tokens. It was the first real non-fungible token standard that came out. It's very much like ERC20, but here every token has a separate ID. You can imagine it, you saw it probably already, but you can imagine it is like deploying an ERC20 token with a supply of 1 over and over again. And instead of running each ERC20 tokens on its own address, you have one address that has many tokens with a supply of 1, and there is one and only one token with a specific ID. There is send, transfer, and approve event functions like ERC20, but for each ID separately, so you can approve that somebody spends token 1 in your name or so. There's a transfer event and an approve event. So everything that was in ERC20 is just extended that it works with IDs. Now, the ERC1155 token standard came out because it was necessary to have more than one token with a specific ID. And that is like marrying the ERC20 token standard with the ERC720 token standard. Now, an ID can have a balance or a supply. Now, there is no standard implementation. That's a big problem. For example, there is an OpenSea example implementation where you create a new token ID, and then you can mint that new token. You can mint tokens with an existing ID. And in OpenZeppelin implementation, you can mint an amount of tokens for a non-existing ID. And so it becomes very vague. I think the reason is because this token standard, it became interesting to work with it, but it would never really caught on with getting real major support for one exact standard implementation. The result is always the same. You have the standard interface, but how you get to your tokens is always different. And there's transfer events for transferring single tokens, transferring a batch of tokens, and so on and so forth. So this is what I was talking about. This one is the OpenSea implementation where you can create, you first create a token, and then internally you mint a token, and then you mint more tokens for a specific token ID. Versus the OpenZeppelin version, where you just mint something for a new ID that doesn't exist yet, and then it gets created with the amount of tokens attached to it. And then the last example, what I wanted to show you is the difference between the balance of for the ERC721 token versus the balance of for the ERC1155 token. Here you have a balance of a specific account for a specific token ID. So the token ID itself gets a balance. And here you just know how many tokens does an owner hold of any kind of ID. I don't know which IDs. There is no enumerable thing. You just know this owner holds 4 tokens. But here you know this owner holds 4 tokens of this ID. And you don't really have a way to determine how many tokens in total the owner holds unless you are programming it yourself.